Hi guys, good morning. This is Dan. Welcome to my channel, Engelgeist. This is your Sunday forecast for not only the day, but this also is the longer forecast which spreads out into the week. So we look at it as at a microcosm and macrocosm level. So we look at all of these cards as if they are going to build Sunday, but they're also setting up the energy underneath, the underpinning energy for the week, for the greater collective. If these cards resonate with you, great. If they don't, that's okay too. You might be on a different trajectory or working on different things, and there may just be more people working on whatever is in these cards at the time that I do this reading. This reading is a timeless reading though, so because it is a message for the higher good of the greater collective, the highest good of the greater collective, then when you're seeing this message is probably the time that you're supposed to see it. So you don't necessarily have to turn it off if it's not during the time that it was originally made for. So this is and for those of you that are new to the channel, welcome. For those of you that are returning, welcome back. For those of you that support me over on Patreon, thank you so very, very much. This forecast is for June 7th through the 13th. So I always go Sunday to Saturday, and then we start a new one on the following Sunday. So that's what we're looking at here. We ended off with the week with that interesting set of cards, the Fool and Perspective, which to me, the Fool always signifies new journeys. And so I'm interested to see what happens in these cards today, quite frankly. So let's get into this. I'm shuffling the cards now. If you want to support the channel, you can follow me on Engelgeist at Engelgeist333 on Instagram. You can like my business page over on Facebook. You can also give me a subscribe here on YouTube if you're watching on YouTube. And hit the notification bell so you get notified when I go live. If you want to do a subscription over at Patreon, at patreon.com, you look up Engelgeist. There's different subscription levels over there. Those people get to vote on polls as to which decks we use for the monthly forecast. There's things for free charmings, things like that. Depending on the level of subscription that you choose. At the base level, you get the daily forecast a day early. So you can kind of foretell maybe what's going to happen a little bit ahead of time. Alright, so let's see. What do they need to know for the 7th through the 15th? What card was that? Just because it just jumped out. I'm not saying a word to you guys. Okay, interesting. It just happened to be at the top of the deck. The deck that I'm working with is the Accurate AF from an artist named PRISM and FLEUR off of Etsy. And so they're round cards, and I'm not quite fully adept at shuffling them. I'm getting better. Excuse me, but this is the first round deck I've worked with, so sometimes cards go flying out. And I'm not a side shuffler. I've said that in other videos. I'm not really that good at side shuffling. I should shuffle in a more traditional manner. So, alright, let's see what's going on. What do we need to know for the 7th through the 13th? What is the highest? What is the message for the collective? What do we need to know? Also, I hope you guys had a good eclipse, lunar eclipse in the sign of Sagittarius with the full moon energy. Well, you'll still be experiencing that even though we're a few days out. That will still be having its sort of lasting effect for probably a little while even. Alright, so let's see the first card. This is each card kind of represents a day or two for the week. Some of you might only experience one of these cards. Some of you might experience all of these cards and then some. It depends on really on how fast you're moving and all of that sort of stuff and what you're working on. But this just gives you sort of a guideline of kind of where the sort of energy is at for the majority of us. Okay, so the first card is the Three of Wands. This is development and opportunity. And when I look at this, to me, Wands deals with the element of fire and spirit, and I like that this card is the first card out for the beginning of the week. Also, with that Fool card on Saturday from yesterday, I really like this here, only because I feel like we are setting up for something new. This idea of sort of stabilizing ourselves. When I look at these two pillars and this pathway going through with these crystals, like to me, it feels like the crystals are walking through to like maybe through a gateway or through a door to something new, to a new perspective, to a new opportunity, to a new sort of way of looking at things. And that newness also is represented in that Fool card and in that Perspective card that we saw yesterday at the end of yesterday's week. This Three of Wands feels like there's, this is sort of the building blocks or the foundation to sort of set up new opportunities and new ideas. So in the early part of the week, some of us, we might be going back to our lives or what's left of them post-pandemic. We might be going back to jobs. We might be going back to friendships, relationships, seeing people again, that sort of a thing. And I think that this Three of Wands brings about that opportunity where we can sort of lay that framework or lay those foundations to start to reacclimate ourselves back into our lives, to start to figure out sort of where we want to head, where things might be going. There are these clouds in the background, which says to me, in my personal opinion, I feel like there is maybe a little bit of a lack of foresight for most of us, as far as we don't really know where we're going to end up still. But that's part of the challenge in all of this. That was sort of that cloth that we saw draped over the Fool on yesterday's forecast, is that we don't necessarily get to see the outcome. Part of this is about walking in faith. There's also this aspect of this desert scene here to me. It gives me this sense that maybe a lot of you might feel like the situation may be bleaker or more, I don't know if desperate is the right word, but things might be a little bit more disparate or not the way you want them to be, but you're willing to do the work, right? You're willing to be strong. That's these pillars on either side, I feel like. You're willing to sort of draw upon that strength of spirit and move yourself forward to create the opportunities that you need so that you can get your life, where you want it to be or where you think it could be, right? These clouds here to me say that there's going to be a lot of us that maybe don't necessarily know how this is all playing out. But I know this is going to sound crazy, but to me, that's half the fun at this point. You kind of have to embrace it because there's no getting around it, right? Those clouds are huge. That desert is huge. It's sort of the environment we're working in. How we choose to interact with it and how we choose to view it in our world is going to be what we sort of receive from it, right? So those clouds, that may be a desert that we're walking through. And I'm using this metaphorically, guys, but it may be a desert that we feel we're walking through right now. The world might feel a little bit burned, crazy, whatever. But those clouds, which do sort of keep us from seeing where we're heading or how to get there, they could also open up and rain upon that desert and bring life to that desert. So keeping that in mind and keeping that sort of hope alive, I think, is key in the early part of the week, and trying to come from a place of, the crystals to me represent sort of you guys walking into this new week. The crystals also represent to me sort of, centeredness, clarity, those sort of things. When I'm looking at these three little crystals kind of lining up and walking through the pillars, to me, it feels like we need to kind of keep that centeredness about us, our light about us, our clarity about what we know to be true for ourselves, and move forward into this week with a semblance of sort of strength and ideas of opportunity and the possibilities for creation, even if we don't fully know what we can create or how we're going to go about doing it. Now, let's look at the midweek. Okay, so the midweek is the Hermit. This is contemplation and soul searching. This is kind of what we've been being told all the way along since this pandemic has started. For those of you that aren't doing this sort of work or aren't going inward and you're too busy focusing on the outer world or what's going on in the outer world, I think that might be why you're sort of seeing things like there's this desert and that the opportunities that you might be dealing with some frustrations and stuff. This Hermit energy in the midweek, to me, is about withdrawing, going inward, centering, connecting with nature for some of you, just feeling more grounded in general, meditating, soul searching, having conversations with yourself. What is it that you want? How is it that you want to get there, right? We have this Fool energy from yesterday leading us into this week, and that Perspective card, which to me was a very powerful card. So it is asking us to put ourselves, our lives, and everything into perspective. And right now there's a lot of stuff shifting on the planet, right? There's a lot of energy moving about perceptions, people's opinions. We're being inundated with shifts and changes that feel rather astronomical and huge. I don't think that this is a bad thing. I think it's actually a really good thing, and we need to kind of get in line with it versus fighting against it. The Hermit allows us to sort of go inward and figure out where we stand on some of these issues and sort of have that truth for ourselves, right? We don't necessarily have to impose that truth upon anybody else. It's kind of how I feel. And the clarity of that is going to help us, I believe, throughout this week, right? It's going to give us strength. There's this sort of spiritual strength happening in this lotus blossom as she's sort of rising up out of it in her own kind of contemplation or awareness of self, right? And it being a major arcana card says to me that this could be a very impactful or powerful opportunity to learn about oneself this week, where you stand maybe on certain issues, where you stand on how you feel about, where your life is at. And I don't mean that that's necessarily a bad thing. Some of you could be very happy with how things are rolling out right now for yourselves. And that's a good thing to be in contact with. And for those of you that see that there might need to be adjustments or that things aren't the way that you want them to be, then now is the time to sort of have those quieter conversations with yourself about how do I go about getting there? How do I go about like creating the opportunities and developing the opportunities that we see in this Three of Wands? To me, this is about sort of clearing the space so that you can have this space to have this kind of internal dialogue with yourself, this meditation with yourself, this connection to your own self, your own higher self. Like, it's almost, to me, the Hermit is all about disconnecting from the outside world and finding the answers within. So that's going to be important during the midweek for some of you. And I could say this too, and this might be a prediction a little bit, but who knows what will be happening in the midweek. There might be a lot of stuff vying for our attention. And I mean that like in the world, on the world stage, politically, media-wise, that sort of thing. That might be why this Hermit card is coming into play, is because it's time to withdraw and not feed the beast, right? Not like sort of give our energy and our attention and our worry, our anguish, our fear, our anger, whatever it is. And trust me, I go through the gamut of all of the emotions myself. And I have to question, there's certain times where I feel that, and I'm just speaking from my own experience, you guys can take this or leave this, but there's certain times where I feel like it's vital that we step forward and we speak our truth right now. It's vital that we sort of take a stance on how we feel about what's going on in the world. But it's also vital that we don't feed anger, resentment, or fear into the situations that are already sort of at a fever pitch. Does that make sense? So finding that truth within is sort of what I feel like this Hermit card is for each and every one of you. Now, that might be something that's just at your own, in your own environment. It may have nothing to do with what's going on in the world, and that's completely fine. That's just as healthy and healing and wonderful as, trying to figure out where you fit into what's going on in the world stage, right? So don't fret if you feel like you want to shut the world out and just deal with you. You're completely allowed, if that makes sense, right? Now, the final card, or the outcome card, sort of where things are headed. This is the Eight of Swords. So this says overcoming fears, but also self-entrapment. To me, that feels a bit like a dichotomy, right? The Eight of Swords is usually depicted as that woman that has those swords around her, and I believe she has a blindfold, or she's at least tied up in some semblance of bondage, and what she doesn't realize is that she's actually sort of protected. She's not necessarily penned in. It's never as worse as it's never as bad as she thinks it is. It's kind of my concept of the Eight of Swords. When I look at this Swords card, the way that the design works is that it looks to me, and I know this is going to sound a little far-fetched or weird, but some of the confusion that we're sensing in the future towards whatever goals we're trying to work towards or create towards, with this Three of Wands in the beginning of the week, that confusion might be a little bit closer. And the reason why I say that is the clouds that we see here in the background of this card are right here in front of our swords, right? And so the swords represents the element of air and the mind. And the Eight of Swords is kind of like a tricky card in the sense that we have the ability to free ourselves. It's sort of got a little bit of a hangman energy, but to a lesser degree, and it's more of a mental realm card. So if our thoughts are, I don't want to say plaguing us, because to me this is an opportunity to see where our thoughts are holding us back and kind of release them, even if we don't see the clear answers around us. And that's the power of this hermit in the midweek, right? If we took the time, if we take the time to have the dialogue, to self-contemplate, to sort of check in with oneself and really give ourselves that moment of empowering ourselves just at our own personal level, right? We don't need to prove it to anybody, we don't need to show or share it with anybody. We just need to have that dialogue with ourselves. I think it sets us up to be prepared for when these clouds kind of roll in. And I use the clouds as a metaphor, but when this might, maybe the situation might get a little bit thicker during the end of the week for some of us, right? The confusion or the lack of the ability to see sort of a positive outcome might become a little bit harder, right? But we have this strength that we've gained in this period of this hermit that is going to allow us to hopefully utilize and become aware of where our thoughts are not serving us or where there might be penning us in. I do like with this card that there's light coming off of these swords amidst the clouds, right? So even though we might feel a little bit, I don't know, fearful, self-doubtful, not quite sure how the plan is going to work out, whatever that plan may be for us, if it's a new job or if it's, you know, a boyfriend or whatever it is we're trying to work on to have or to replace or repair. And that's, you know, what we're looking at here with this Three of Wands and then reflecting upon in this Hermit. By the week's end, if we are having confusion, self-doubt, worry, we need to like sort of come in contact with that idea that that worry is of our own making, is really kind of my feeling with this Eight of Swords. And it's an opportunity to sort of overcome these fears and sort of become aware of where we entrap ourselves in our own thoughts, in our own mind, and how that sort of creates our reality. Now, let's look at the Starseed Oracle and see what it wants to clarify for us during this week. And as we move into the week, we will be doing the daily and adding to these elements or these cards to get further clarification with each day as we move through the week. So, keeping that in mind, this is not set in stone, and like I said, some of you might experience all of these cards, some of you may only experience one or two, or some of you might experience all of these things and then some within the week. Oh wow, so this is baby steps. Action. Follow your intuition before it makes sense. Okay, do you guys see that design? Again, we have somebody walking through a doorway or a portal. And look at this whole big, like, sort of, to me, what appears to be like an alien spaceship here in the background. So, the reason why I point out this doorway is it reminds me of these pillars and these crystals walking through this doorway at the beginning of the week. So this theme, to me, or what I feel like the Starseed Oracle is adding to sort of this experience that we're having in these three cards throughout the week, is this is about being kind to ourselves. The baby steps aspect of us is like, trust yourself and move forward even if you can't necessarily see the full outcome or the full path, right? If you have a desire at the beginning of the week of something that you want to achieve, if you have a clarity around that, take this time to sort of begin to move forward or to create that, to discover what that opportunity is and how you want it. You may not know exactly how to get there. That's okay. There's a certain amount of, like, I think what these cards are asking us to do, especially with the Fool from yesterday, and I kind of feel like this has been a theme going on in the readings leading up to this for the greater collective, is this is about finding wholeness or completeness, awareness within ourselves, and trusting that in such sort of confusing and trying times, right? I think that what spirit or what these cards are asking us to do, I don't necessarily want to like label it spirit per se, but what I feel like the message is here is that it's being put back to us in our own personal world, our own personal awareness, to kind of figure out how we interact with the world right now, because the world is shifting and changing and so much is going on. Are we adding to it, or are we like are we adding to the positivity or to the negativity? That's the first question I would be asking, at least myself personally. And then, am I creating what it is that I want, even if I don't know how to go about getting there, right? Am I working towards a goal that feels good or a goal that feels miserable? Am I stuck in fear? Am I looking at things as a desert, or am I looking at things as an oasis, right? And so as I move through to the midweek, this Hermit card is this idea of getting in contact with myself in a very profound, powerful, knowledgeable way. And we see that in this Baby Steps card where it says, follow your intuition before it makes sense. So there's going to be maybe some choices for you guys this week, some options. That's going to be, I get a feeling it may be around the midweek during this Hermit energy. That's why it's like kind of like get in touch with that deeper sense of self, that more powerful awareness, and utilize that awareness to kind of move you forward. Because there might be challenges by the end of the week where you might have second guessing, self-doubt, worries, or outside influences that are telling you you can't do that. And what these cards say to me is that's not true. The Eight of Swords says you can. You may not necessarily see the path very clearly, but that's okay. You have to take these sort of baby steps along it and trust that intuition and move towards that sort of better place, through that door, through that portal. You know, I'm going to go back to this. I'm not a huge, I don't know a ton about astrology, but with all of these eclipses that are happening, especially right now, we have two in June and July. These are like portals opening up astrologically that is sort of setting the energy. This full moon lunar eclipse in the element of, in the sign of Sagittarius, is this opportunity for transformation, growth, opportunity. Sagittarius is associated with the planet of Jupiter, which is generally a benefic planet that is all about good luck and abundance. So if we take this energy during the full moon and we let go of what we don't want and begin to like work towards creating what we do want, we have an opportunity here through trusting our intuition and our higher selves, and that's that work that we do in that Hermit card, to move forward towards that, even if it feels like the rest of the world might be crumbling apart out from underneath us. Do you see that in the card? There's something on the other side, be it spirit, be it God, be it a master plan, be it something that we don't necessarily fully understand, but intuitively we know we have to keep working our way towards it. If we don't, if we stop, if we get caught in the muck and mire, we're just going to stay caught. And I feel like there's an opportunity, maybe even a warning here that says, like, don't get caught this week. Keep moving forward. Let's see what the grounding stone is for the week. Okay, so the grounding stone is on Tiger's Eye, which is very grounding, but it's generosity. I think that this means about being kind to ourselves, being kind to our situation, trying to be as positive as possible and as generous as possible with our thoughts, keeping them sort of grounded in this idea of what can I give to myself, what can I give to others in the process? Does that make sense? Like, so this energy of generosity, when you think of generosity, it's like, I have enough, I have plenty. So like, if we're in a desert, if we feel like we're in a bleak desert, we have plenty of strength with these, where we can't see the future, right? We have plenty of strength with these pillars on either side of us. We have plenty of light within us, plenty of clarity in these crystals to move us through this desert experience at the beginning of the week. The Hermit is all about being generous to ourselves from a spiritual level, right? By taking that time to have those more quiet conversations and contemplations with ourselves to better understand what it is we want and how it is, where it is we fit in this world, right? In a more gentle manner. And then this Eight of Swords to me is a generosity, the aspect of generosity in this is by releasing ourselves from our own sort of self-undoing or self-sabotage thinking. Right? So in all of those ways, that's how we're generous to ourselves. And when we are being good to ourselves in that way, and we're grounding in that and being kind to ourselves this week, as we make these choices and we step forward with these sort of baby steps or these, you know, small commitments that we make to ourselves, no matter what our fear or self-doubt is telling us, we're also enabling ourselves to be able to bring more to the plate or more to the table within the world, period. So it gives us the ability to like live more generously within others or within our relationships or in our own world. When we do that, we set out that sort of intention or that vibration, good things come back to us, right? We live from a sort of a space, when you're being generous, you sort of live from a space of having more than enough, so much so that you can share it not only with yourself, but with others, right? So wherever, and remember, there's ways of being generous that doesn't necessarily have to do with money or material goods. Generosity can be our time, our love, our patience, our our ear. Like if somebody just needs a place to vent or sort things out, just being a support to them could be a form of being generous. So keeping that in mind as you move through the week, this is going to be the underpinning stone of all of the other stones that we see this week. I think that this will be a great opportunity. I do think that there is this, like this Fool card says to me, there is this beginning of a journey that we're about to take. These baby steps are those very, beginning steps that we're going to be doing throughout this week, trusting our intuition over our sort of maybe even our logical mind, because our logical mind by week's end might be fighting us a little bit. All right, that is your forecast. I hope that makes sense, guys. I look forward to seeing you guys tomorrow. It'll be interesting to see how this energy builds during the week. If you are interested in staying tuned, please like, share, comment, subscribe. I would greatly appreciate it. I look forward to seeing you guys soon. If you're interested in a private reading, also you can message me at my business page on Facebook, and I can answer any questions for you there. Sometimes I can give, not sometimes, but I can certainly give better insight when I'm just reading for a specific person. These are broad spectrum readings for, anybody that may watch this video at any given time. So, I feel like the theme of this is don't forget to create and be brave enough to continue forward, even if it's in small doses, small steps. All right, I love you guys. Take care and have a great day. I will see you tomorrow. All right, bye-bye.